Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying. Or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
Hey there. Ritual here to give a big shout out to you for making it through the hectic holiday season. The magic of those family moments, that was you. And now there's new milestones to prep for in 2025. This new year, check clean, quality pregnancy nutrient support off your to-do list with Ritual. We've done the research to create science-backed pregnancy support like our prenatal multivitamin, natal choline, and fertility support, all designed to be taken alongside each other. But don't just take our word for it. They're also third-party tested for microbes and heavy metals and Clean Label Project certified. So whether you're trying, thinking about trying, or already there, we don't have to tell you that prioritizing yourself can be the hardest part. That's why we're helping you get started today with 30% off a 3-month supply for a limited time at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Some insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Vaccines, psychotropic drugs, and artillery batteries not included.
No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, no fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio, American Freedom Radio.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I am your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. And this show is brought to you by our brand new sponsor, Subash Technosis. Hey, check out SubashTechnosis.com and also go to their Facebook page, Subash Technosis. That's Subash. And Technosis is spelled Technosis. Now, these guys are based in India, and they are an outsourcing company. They will do websites for you. They will do search engine optimization for you. They'll do call centers. They got 240 people working for them over there in India, okay? At the snap of a finger, we can get them to jump to their computers and do whatever we want. Call centers, press releases, search engine optimization, data entry. If you got some repetitive tasks, you need a big data entry job, contact Subash Technosis and go to their Facebook page and like Subash Technosis. SubashTechnosis.com. Also to Opperman Report, go to my website, OppermanReport.com, and join our members section, guys. We need more members to keep the show afloat and keep us going here. And don't forget, too, my friend Danny over here at American Freedom Radio. He needs donations, too, because he's doing his big, giant revamping of television. I'm going to be a TV star, finally. I've always wanted to be on TV. And this is my big chance, okay? Although I may have a technical difficulty here. I may not be able to be seen on the TV set, but we'll see what happens. But Danny needs donations, too, at AmericanFreedomRadio.com to get this TV station off the ground. Okay, enough nonsense. But don't forget Subhash's Technosis. Okay, Subhash. We got a great guest today. This is a topic that I have been fascinated with since I was a little kid in the 8th grade. The Patty Hearst Kidnapping. We have Brad Schreiber. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. His book is Revolution's End, The Patty Hearst Kidnapping, Mind Control, and the Secret History of... That's a long title, brother. Donald DeFreeze and the SLA. Brad, are you there?
Hi, how are you, Ed?
How do I pronounce your last name?
Schreiber. In German, Schreiben is writing. So I tell people I had absolutely no choice in the matter.
Ah, very cool. Okay, I'm German, Opperman. I should have known that. Okay, so tell us a little bit just about yourself, Mr. Schreiber. Who is Brad Schreiber?
He's a guy who can't decide what he wants to do in life, so he's done everything. Back in the 70s, when I was rubbing shoulders with people involved in the Patty Hearst SLA kidnapping drama or trauma, I had a comedy group or two in the Bay Area. I worked in TV, radio, stage, got involved in theater, founded the San Francisco Playwrights Center in the Bay Area, moved to Southern California, got involved as a television writer-producer, started publishing books. And so it's been a very varied career. And Revolution's End is something that I kept waiting for other people to do. I kept looking at movies that came out, documentaries, books, including Jeffrey Toobin's new book, to see if anybody would deal with the intelligence angles connected to the Patty Hearst case. If anyone would deal with the mind control experiments used on Northern California prisoners connected to the Patty Hearst case. And no one wanted to touch it. And I finally said to myself, you know what? You have to write this book. No one else is going to do it.
That's so true, because I've heard this version. I've heard this story that you have here. And I've tried to get a guest on this topic. And there's no one out there. You know?
Well, I'm very fortunate to tell you the truth, Ed. I had done a lot of research, and of course Mae Brussell, the great researcher from way back when, and reading all the books and magazines, and the alternative press actually did its job in the mid-'70s. The LA Free Press and the Berkeley Barb had very important stories about what is now Revolution's End. But I always felt there was some component missing. And then Dick Russell, who has written some books with Jesse Ventura, I found him randomly on the internet. And he had written an article for Argosy magazine way back when, Argosy in the mid-'70s. And it was reprinted in part and put on the internet. The Ann Arbor Sun, a weekly, an alternative weekly in 1976, ran an article called Who Ran the SLA? And despite my knowledge about the case, in reading this article, I went, this is the final piece of the puzzle. The use of a CIA...
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying. Or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses. all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
Officer and the prisoners who underwent behavior modification in order to create a group that then lured in unsuspecting white radicals and became the Symbionese Liberation Army. And I dedicate the book to Dick Russell because of that groundbreaking research that he did.
Very cool. And Peter Dale Scott wrote like an intro?
Peter Dale Scott, God love him, gave me a wonderful blurb, as did David Talbot, who wrote the book on Alan Dulles and the CIA, The Devil's Chessboard. And thanks to Peter Dale Scott, I'm talking with you. He introduced us.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, way back when, I used to go to symposia where Peter would talk, because he was the preeminent researcher in the Central Intelligence Agency's clandestine programs, its distribution of heroin out of Vietnam during the war, et cetera, et cetera. And I just thought, this guy is the granddaddy of great leftist political research. And lo and behold, many years later, he gave me a blurb on Revolution's End, and I couldn't be prouder.
Yeah, what an honor, right? Yeah. Well, let me ask a couple of questions about you now. You're still in the Bay Area?
No, I'm in Los Angeles now.
Okay.
And this book, it didn't take that long to write. It really took a long time to get it to market. And I don't mind telling you that two publishers agreed to publish this book and then got cold feet because it's highly critical of the FBI, the CIA, the LAPD, and the California Department of Corrections, as well as Nixon and Ronald Reagan. And even publishers who had published books on the Black Panthers went, Brad, it's not that we doubt your research. This is not the kind of book we normally publish, and we feel uncomfortable. And then finally, God love them, Skyhorse Publishing in New York, which has done some remarkable work, agreed to publish Revolution's End, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah, I believe we've had a few hosts on from Skyhorse, authors from Skyhorse in the past. Now, you said earlier that you had rubbed shoulders with some of these SLA guys. How old are you, first of all? How old are you? You look like a young guy.
I'm an old guy.
How old?
I just sound young. Never mind how old I am.
I saw your picture. You look young.
I'm sort of giving it away, Ed, by telling you that I had a comedy group in the 70s in the Bay Area called the Burlingame Philharmonic Orchestra. And one day we were booked into a crummy little club in San Francisco because our manager said, "Oh, my friends Joe and Russ are going to love that bit you do about Patty Hearst for Kraft Philadelphia cream cheese." And I said, "Well, who are Russ and Joe?" Assuming, well, do they own a comedy club? Are they managers? How are they going to help my career? And he said, I'll tell you when you meet them. So we do the gig, and when we get to the Patty Hearst for Kraft Philadelphia cream cheese, because Patty by then was kidnapped and the story was unfolding, these two straggly-looking guys in the back of the house laugh hysterically and literally fall off their chairs. At the end of the show, my manager introduces me very quickly to them, first names only. "Hey, this is Russ and Joe." They shake hands with the three members of the Burlingame Philharmonic, and they're gone. So now we're walking outside, and I say to my manager, "For God's sake, who are these guys? Did they own a comedy club? Who are they?" He goes, "Oh, they're Joe Ramiro and Russ Little of the Symbionese Liberation Army. They're friends of mine."
Get the hell out
I
of
say,
here.
"Do you mean to tell me that you got us a comedy gig for which we were paid no money so that we can entertain two members of the SLA, a group that had murdered the black Oakland school superintendent, Dr. Marcus Foster. And shortly thereafter, I parted ways with my manager. But interestingly, neither Russ Little nor Joe Ramiro was directly involved in the murder of Marcus Foster. But like good quote-unquote soldiers, they were caught and never informed on the actual perpetrators, which included Donald DeFreeze, the nominal head of the SLA. And I should tell you, we've sort of buried the lead here. The thing that everybody gets wrong about the Patty Hearst kidnapping, there are two major things they get wrong. Number one, Patty Hearst had an ongoing relationship with Donald DeFreeze of the SLA when he was in prison. She was a closet radical.
Before she was kidnapped?
Before she was kidnapped, she knew Donald DeFreeze. And number two, and I think in a way much more important than the fact that Patty had some sort of relationship and gave money to DeFreeze, more historically and politically important, the Symbionese Liberation Army was created by a black CIA agent working in Vacaville prison named Colston Westbrook with the cooperation of certain members of the California Department of Correction. And what they did was they offered DeFreeze a chance to get out of jail, befriend white radicals, and set up a phony left-wing group that no one would know about. And in the process of robbing banks and the murder of Marcus Foster, the phony SLA destroyed the legitimate new left movement in the Bay Area, which was the focus of left-wing politics in America in the mid-'70s, and it began the process.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying. Or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
A militarization of the police, because the SLA, as you recall, Ed, was 6 members were wiped out in a shootout and fire in Los Angeles in '75. As soon as that happened, because of the presence of SWAT teams from the LAPD, police departments all across America started contacting the LAPD. And they said, we saw that shootout and fire for 2 hours live on national television. You guys are amazing. Will you come to our police departments and we'll pay you to train us to use that kind of equipment, automatic weapons, and those tactics? And so literally the SLA was a phony organization that began the militarization of the police. And I don't need to tell you what's going on in America now between police and citizens.
Yeah, it's frightening out there right now. But Brad, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, because we have a young audience, you know.
Sure.
I'm 53, but my audience is young, and I'm not afraid to say my ages. But let me ask you a question. Now, tell us the story of the SLA and the Patty Hearst kidnapping. Give us the broad overview of what people see in these movies and stuff.
The basic summary is that Patty Hearst, using a friend's UC Berkeley ID, was the daughter of Randolph Hearst, the son of William Randolph Hearst, who owned a huge empire that included the San Francisco Examiner. So she was a little rich girl who was unbeknownst to people, she was a closet radical. And she and other white women were entranced with black prisoners and oftentimes gave money and had sex with them because they were seen as the vanguard of a political movement in the mid-'70s. As I say, DeFreeze created this Faustian bargain, enticed a number of white radicals who came to the prison where he was in Vacaville, California, through an organization called the Black Cultural Association, BCA. And ostensibly, the prison said, we're inviting in white radicals to meet with these black prisoners to have you understand what they go through. Really, legitimately, that was not what was going on. They were trying to entice white radicals to befriend Donald DeFreeze, who would then create this phony left-wing organization. And it became this incredible story because they kidnapped Patty Hearst, took her to a variety of locations throughout the Bay Area, and in the meanwhile demanded not a ransom from her father, Randolph Hearst, but a free food giveaway to the poor people of certain communities, mostly inner-city communities, and mostly black people. And it was over $2 million in 1975 money. And the free food was given out, and then they still didn't return Patty Hearst. And so inevitably, the story exploded when she decided to join the SLA, and in communiques that were either in newspapers or audio tapes on radio stations. She condemned her family, said she had joined the SLA, rejected her fiancé, who she was about to marry when she was kidnapped, and they robbed a San Francisco Hibernia bank together. So now the debate was, should we even try and secure Patty Hearst from her kidnappers, or is she now one of them and she is basically someone we need to arrest? And there's a fascinating angle to that story in Revolution's End, where there was a debate about whether Patty Hearst was a common criminal or through coercion was no longer responsible for her activities. So that's kind of the broad view of what happened. And in 18 months, the story was worldwide. It dominated the Newsweekly's Time and Newsweek. I think they made like 9 or 10 covers. It was everywhere until eventually that horrible shootout and fire in Los Angeles, which she and Bill and Emily Harris luckily escaped. And inevitably, there were other people involved in the SLA, and she was, of course, captured. The trial of the century, so they called it, in 1976, where she was sentenced to 7 years. And there's a fascinating, we have to talk about this too, there's a fascinating angle to the story in that Leo Ryan, a representative in San Mateo County, knew that Donald DeFreeze had undergone behavior modification at Vacaville Prison and went to Jimmy Carter and said, you've got to cut this woman free. She's part of a blown intelligence mission that was using a prisoner undercover. And she didn't set up her kidnapping, and she wasn't responsible for what happened to her. And she was convinced that she would be murdered by the FBI and the police and eventually join this group. So that's the kind of rough overview, and some of the other really interesting tangents about her state of mind, the legality of the case, And really what the state of California, through Reagan, Attorney General Evel Younger, and the California Department of Corrections Director Raymond Procunier all did, they all knew about this program that created a phony left-wing group, and it was devastatingly effective, Ed.
Now, Leo Ryan, that's the one that died in Jonestown.
Yes, indeed it is.
That's a coincidence.
Oh, it's no coincidence, buddy boy. Look, I don't like people who use the term conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Whenever they say, Brad, you're a conspiracy theorist, I go, no, I'm a conspiracy scientist. I'm interested in conspiracies and then finding facts that support my case rather than picking on sort of tangential, factoids. So let me tell you a fact. The 5 adult children of Representative Leo Ryan of San Mateo County, Northern California, after Jonestown, filed suit. There is a record of it, filed a suit against the Central Intelligence Agency. And in that suit, they said that Jonestown had been created as a behavior modification program, and that they knew that Leo Ryan was going there to break it up because he was one of the greatest adversaries of the CIA in the history of our country, and that the CIA was responsible for the murder of Leo Ryan. And not too surprisingly, the case was thrown out of court. It didn't even hear it. So obviously, those 5 adult children of Ryan had to have facts to bring this case to bear on the government.
I'd love to get a look at those documents.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I'd love to get a look at those documents,
Well, that's the thing about researching Revolution's End. Dick Russell had saved 40-year-old documents that he handed me, and as a private investigator, that, asking somebody what happened and actually having the document are two different things. And I don't think I could have, as I said, written this book without Dick Russell's 40-year-old, 3-inch thick file of documents that probably don't exist anywhere anymore. And they include court records about Donald DeFreeze, affidavits from prisoners and investigators and lawyers. And it's a wild story. And I had to leave some of it out because I couldn't fit it into the book, but it fascinated me.
Okay, now, you mentioned that Patty Hearst was going into the prison, part of this group, this Black Cultural Association. And she was having sex with DeFreeze in there. Now, was this with the consent, or were they sneaking around? What was the operation there?
No, it's really interesting. So the mid-'70s this is especially for people who either haven't researched this or weren't even alive, who are your listeners. The prison system in Northern California was unlike any other prison system in America at that time and any prison system since. Okay? You have to understand that to start with. The reason is people like George Jackson, a black convict who was a revolutionary, was inspiring a lot of white and Latino radicals. And so what happened is the California Department of Corrections went, my God, there have been shootouts and stabbings in prison. We have to take control of this. So what they started to do, especially under Raymond Procunier, who I mentioned earlier, the director of the CDC, is they started using prisoners as snitches because they wanted to control all the political stuff going on in prisons like San Quentin, Folsom, Soledad, Vacaville. These were hotbeds where white radical attorneys would go to black prisoners and say, hey, I'm communicating with this group on the outside, with the Black Panthers or Venceremos or this other group. And the only way that the CDC saw that they could sort of destroy this movement, this communication between black revolutionary leaders and the Panthers and other radicals, was to actually go to prisoners and say, we will make you a drug dealer. You can deal anything from marijuana to heroin, and you can keep 30% of the money that you make among prisoners, and the correctional officer would keep 70%. And you now answer to us, and you tell us what's going on within the prison. It was so out of control, Ed, and this is one of the main reasons I wrote Revolutions, and I could not believe how out of control it was, that certain prison officials would go to guys and say, we want you to cooperate with us, and if the prisoner said, no, I don't want to, they would say, well, we're going to throw you in isolation for 4 or 5 months. See how you like that. Or they would threaten to have them killed by a rival gang member. Or they would threaten to put a snitch jacket on them, that is, to accuse them of being a snitch when they refused to be a snitch, so that someone else would take them out. It was completely insane. And within this incredibly dangerous and hostile environment, the CDC actually went to a black prisoner, a man in his early 50s named Robert Hyde, before Donald DeFreeze, and said, oh, you're a jailhouse lawyer and you're giving legal aid to other prisoners. We want you to be a snitch for us and tell us everything you find out about the politicization of prisoners in Northern California penitentiaries. And Robert Hyde said, I'm not going to be a snitch. And they put him in isolation for 5 months. Solitary confinement for 5 months, Ed, which would have driven anybody insane. Turned out that Hyde was a...
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying. Or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
Very strong-willed man, and he realized he would probably go mad or die. So after 5 months of isolation, he agreed to be a snitch and report back to prison officials about what he heard, while supposedly being a jailhouse lawyer and giving advice to other prisoners about parole and other legal proceedings. While he was doing that, they went to him and said, we are starting a gang. We are creating a new gang in the prison system in Northern California, and it's going to be called, you'll never guess,
SLA.
the Symbionese Liberation Army. And you, Robert Hyde, are going to be the nominal head of this. He goes, I'm not a gang member. I was arrested and thrown in jail for virtually for life because of possession of a handgun that I never used. And they said, this is what we want you to do. We want you to be the head of this gang, and it's going to be at the other prisons as well. And this way we can coalesce information. And basically Hyde said yes, but did not cooperate, and his life was endangered. And there's a whole strand in Revolution's End about Robert Hyde. I don't want to spend any more time on it, except to say that he was the first guy who was supposed to run the prison SLA. So there were two SLAs. There was the one I just described to you that served as a control mechanism for the politics within Northern California prisons. And then there was the relationship between Colston Westbrook and Donald DeFreeze, which I described, and then he created the SLA, and that was Patty Hearst and the other white followers.
And Colston Westbrook was the CIA agent?
Colston Westbrook was the most fascinating character in writing this book. I knew about him, by the way, when I lived in the Bay Area. Not only did Mae Brussell do important stuff, but again, the Berkeley Barb and the LA Free Press. Paul Krasner wrote about it in The Realist. So people knew that Colston Westbrook was a black CIA agent who had traveled extensively through Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Korea, and the like. And there's a strand in Revolution's End where I establish his connection to a guy named William Herman, Herrmann, who was the counterintelligence expert for Ronald Reagan when he was governor of California. And they were both in Vietnam during the Phoenix program. For your listeners, the Phoenix program was a CIA program that wanted to control civilians who might be cooperating with the Viet Cong. And it's one of the worst atrocities of the era. The CIA, in collaboration with the South Vietnamese police and other branches of the military, were responsible for the death of 20 to 40,000 civilians who were suspected but not proven of cooperating with the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese Army. Colston Westbrook's job when he was in Vietnam, under the cover of a CIA proprietary called Pacific Architects and Engineers, his job was to oversee the interrogation centers that pulled in these suspects in the Phoenix program. And so when he got out of Vietnam, they offered him a job running the Black Cultural Association at Vacaville while using the cover of UC Berkeley as an Afro-American Studies professor. And he picked the one guy. Look, if I can do this, I normally don't read from my book, but there's 3 paragraphs that summarize this perfectly, Ed.
Okay.
Would it be all right to read it?
Sure. You got a great voice. You got a great storytelling voice, yeah.
Thanks. So he was called, Westbrook was called the, I love this term, outside guest coordinator. Yeah, right. All right, so this is on page 46. It's like 3 paragraphs, and it just will cement in everybody's mind this relationship. Of all the, quote, outside guest coordinators that could have been chosen for the Black Cultural Association, such as people with experience in social work, criminal justice, or organizations advocating prisoner rights, Vacaville, that's California Medical Facility Vacaville, wound up with Colston Westbrook, undercover liaison for the CIA during the Phoenix program. And he was handpicked by former PSYOPs officer, psychological operations officer, William Herman, then advising Governor Ronald Reagan on counterintelligence. And it happened at the height of the black prisoner reform movement, right after the CIA's Operation Chaos provided funds to Vacaville, which was an ongoing MK Ultra and MK search site for experimentation on prisoners. And of all the black prisoners who attended BCA meetings, Westbrook chose to particularly befriend Donald DeFreeze. The handsome, shy, wide-eyed convict was quiet, compliant, had no political ideology, had no regular visitors at first, and most importantly, he had been a police agent for the LAPD. He could be manipulated, and if he resisted, Vacaville could threaten to expose him as a former snitch, a status that would endanger his very life among certain prisoners. So that's what I kind of left out in talking about this wild story, is DeFreeze started out setting up Black Panthers for arrest around Watts in Los Angeles. And he was a petty criminal, and he also perpetrated crimes on his own. And finally, after a dozen of them, they said, this guy is completely unreliable, the LAPD did. They threw him in jail, and that's where Colston Westbrook came back from Vietnam. He's tasked to set up this supposed black prison group that's going to rap with radicals. Can you imagine, just on the face of it, Ed, is there anything more absurd than a law and order governor like Reagan and Evel Younger, one of the most militant attorneys general, I always get that wrong, in U.S. history, are going to invite white radicals to talk to black prisoners during a time when Reagan and Younger are fearful of the whole political movement of black prisoners. It obviously was a setup. And in fact, when Donald DeFreeze got out of prison, he escaped from Folsom. He was transferred to Folsom. The white radicals that he talked to all thought he had to be an agent. The reason was, the first thing he talked about when he got out of Folsom Prison was he'd go to white radicals and go, hey man, I need a hitman. You know anybody who's a hitman? And the radicals, who honestly advocated the overthrow of the government, were stunned. They go, we don't kill people. We don't use hitmen. And then he went to other white radicals and said, hey man, I'm hiring myself out as a hitman. Clearly, Donald DeFreeze was being tasked with undercutting the legitimate left-wing movement that existed in the Bay Area. And Westbrook played him like a fiddle. And it's one of the most fascinating relationships. The Patty Hearst relationship with DeFreeze, of course, is also fascinating because they knew each other before, he became the agent who broke out of prison.
Well, let me ask you a couple questions.
The relationship with Westbrook was fantastically complex, and actually, I enjoyed writing it more than anything in Revolution's End.
Now, DeFreeze is always portrayed. Oh, by the way, first I want to go back to the thing about the Phoenix Project. People should go and look up the Doug Valentine interview I did because he wrote the book on the Phoenix Project and Phoenix Program. And it'll knock you on your butt. Okay, when you listen to this guy, and he hung out with the director of the CIA, stayed in his house, and went through all his paperwork and stuff like that to write this book. But now DeFreeze is normally characterized as this charismatic guy, and you describe him as a loner, with no visitors and no friends and stuff. How did that?
Yeah, well, first let me say, Ed, that Doug Valentine helped me in the writing of Revolution's End. He gave me a lot of incredible research about the Phoenix operation. Of course, he wrote the book, The Phoenix Program, and he is an expert and a wonderful guy.
Don't you love him? Yeah, he's a great guy.
So kudos to him. And I can't wait to hear that interview that you referred to on your website.
He actually said it was his favorite interview too. To tell you, at the time, yeah.
Yes, he's the expert.
Yeah.
He's the go-to guy on all of this, and it was very helpful in talking about that section of the book. So there are things that are very comical about this story, obviously darkly comical because it involves infiltration and death and some really sordid things. But also they were the gang that couldn't shoot straight. And Donald DeFreeze was so uncharismatic that you can actually go on YouTube and listen to him reading communiques from the SLA. His voice is flat. He has trouble pronouncing words that are multisyllabic. Hey, look, even Emily Harris, who was a member of the SLA, said that DeFreeze spoke the least among everybody when they had meetings, when the SLA was hiding out in the Bay Area. And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. This man must have been terrified out of his mind because he knew that if the white followers found out that he'd been associated with the LAPD and the prisons and the CIA, they might well have killed him. And if he didn't do the bidding of the people that said, we want you to be a police agent, they might have killed him. And I make the point that out of all of the black prisoners, and there were a lot of them who cut deals with correctional officers and did become snitches and did become drug dealers within the prisons, they couldn't find a single prisoner who would agree to basically be part of the SLA, except Donald DeFreeze. And the only reason was that he had already basically done it to stay alive. I take a very humanitarian approach to researching DeFreeze. Most people talk about him as a petty crook and a psychopath. This is a guy, Ed, who was beaten with hammers and a baseball bat by his father when he was a boy in Cleveland. And for survival purposes, his mother sent him away to live with a reverend in Buffalo, New York, where he fell in love with a cousin and became extremely religious. This was a kid who was desperate to try and find a way to exist in the world. And unfortunately, he fell in with a gang. Then he got...
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying. Or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
Involved in petty crime, and by the time he moved his family to L.A., he couldn't support them. And after an arrest, an LAPD officer said, listen, how would you like to make some extra money setting up Black Panthers, do gun deals? We're infiltrating the Black Panthers who have an inordinate amount of power. And that sort of set DeFreeze on this path of doom. And so naturally, he was the only guy in prison who would take this deal because he had already basically done it, and he found it intolerable being in prison.
What was he in prison for?
He had done a succession of actually comically ridiculous crimes where he'd constantly get caught. But the crime that inevitably sealed his fate was the holdup of a Bank of America in Los Angeles. He had bludgeoned a poor woman who was visiting from Hawaii and stolen a check, then tried to cash the check, even though it had a female Filipino name on the check. He tried to cash it. And when they called the police, he got into a running gun battle and was injured in a shootout. And what happened is, as I said, he used to do gun deals with the Black Panthers so that the LAPD could move in and arrest the Panthers, and then DeFreeze, of course, would be let go. Well, he kept one of the guns out of one of those deals, and it would have implicated the LAPD. So by that time, the LAPD said, well, this guy is so incompetent, and now he kept one of the guns that we gave him in one of the deals that he was doing. Let's just get rid of him. send them off to Vacaville. And Vacaville was a house of horrors because you not only had drug experimentation on prisoners, you had psychosurgery, you had all kinds of stuff being done to people. It was kind of a medical way station before people were sent to other penitentiaries. And normally the prisoners would remain there maybe 3 months, possibly 6 months. Donald DeFreeze, who was never a problem, a discipline problem, was at Vacaville for 3 years. And I have paperwork I got from Dick Russell that says that he was given a drug of the day called Prolixin. It was a hideous drug that when it was injected in you, you couldn't stop moving. You'd pace until you were exhausted, and then you couldn't sleep. And you basically wanted to jump out of your skin. And Vacaville excelled in these kinds of medical experiments, would see how far they could push certain prisoners and see what they might be able to make them do. And clearly, here's the last point before I shut up here.
No, you're great.
Is that at Vacaville, there were so many other prisoners, including a prisoner named Clifford Jefferson, who knew a lot about what went on with the CIA and the SLA. There was so much experimentation, and the way they got away with it is Vacaville would ask the prisoners, we're going to throw you in isolation, and we're going to beat you up, and we're going to have somebody else in the rival gang take you out, unless you agree to some experiment. And if you agree to these drug experiments, we ask you to sign an informed consent form so that no one can say we're doing it against your will. And if you do that, we might make you a drug dealer or we'll give you preferential treatment. And it was this kind of relationship that Donald DeFreeze had with people at Vacaville. He was cooperative. He allowed them to use drugs on him, and in exchange, he not only became a drug dealer of marijuana, but he had white female radicals who visited the prison allowed to have sex with him, something that was basically unheard of even at that time. And the reason was they were setting up DeFreeze, giving him preferential treatment, because inevitably they were going to let him go and run the phony SLA on the outside.
Okay, well, that answers my question. I was going to ask you, was it voluntary or was it being done secretly to them, the experiments? Now, somehow he winds up escaping.
Well, but to answer the question that you think I answered, it actually is both things, Ed. It's like it was secretive, and Vacaville denied it, even though this has been on record for decades now. There's absolutely no question about what they did. In fact, Jack Anderson, a really well-known political columnist in the United States back in the 70s, in a major syndicated column, had testimony from the superintendent at Vacaville. Really? Not another prisoner, not a rumor. Thomas Clannon, the superintendent at Vacaville, admitted that Clifford Jefferson and Donald DeFreeze had undergone drug treatment, but that's all he would say. So what they did is they tried to keep it sub rosa so that people wouldn't find out about it and protest, but they also figured the best way to do it is informed consent, so that we're basically getting the prisoner's signature. But of course, this is entrapment. You have a prisoner who you're threatening unless they agree to have drugs pumped into them and be examined and be controlled. So what kind of deal is that? It's sad because there's a history in the 70s of not only Vacaville, but the Atascadero State Hospital for the criminally insane, where a CIA project used drugs on these poor people who basically didn't know left from right. And of course, they're the ideal victims because they have absolutely no way to fight back. And I'm happy to report that, Frank Church, the senator from Idaho, had hearings on this in 75, and then in 76 the report was published that talked about a lot of the clandestine stuff that the CIA was doing. It didn't all go away immediately, but eventually it did disappear. And was part of a kind of a 20, 25-year period where the CIA, through MK Ultra and through MK Search and other programs, did experiments on witting and unwitting people. And it was just a horrible period of U.S. history. Now I've forgotten what the next question is going to be.
Well, it was going to be about, I'll tell you in a second, but who knows what they do now, like in Abu Ghraib and stuff like that. They could be doing, much more elaborate stuff these days.
I don't know. I mean, I'd probably have to argue on that point because, the stuff that Bush and Cheney's administration, and I say Cheney's administration because I feel in some ways he was controlling more things regarding the Iraq War than Bush was. Those things were revealed in a lot of documentaries, to be honest, I'm not in any way saying that they were acceptable and that torture is acceptable. It's really what separates us from a lot of other countries is the fact that we do not torture. But that said, Ed, it was insane at Vacaville. It was unlike anything that anybody can imagine in the penal system today. It really was.
Now, then he somehow escaped. How did that come about?
That's not such a complex story. In fact, there were other prisoners black prisoners who they wanted to oversee DeFreeze because he was rather incompetent. And they were told that they would be allowed to escape, and a guard, according to testimony that was given to researchers, the guards would leave a gate open, and these black prisoners would not go for it. And the reason they did not go for it was they understood the precarious position they would be put in as a snitch. If I'm working for the CDC on the outside as a police agent, I've got two sets of people who want to kill me. One is the people running me as a police agent. If I don't do the job right, if anything goes wrong, or even if I do what they want, my life is expendable. On the other hand, if the people who I am deceiving, the leftist radicals in the Bay Area, find out I'm cooperating with the prison system and that I'm reporting on them, my life is again in jeopardy. Most of these people who I detail in Revolution's End, there's two guys in particular, Damien Tomita and Fred Braswell, who knew DeFreeze and refused to take the option to be escapee and police agents. They knew what a danger it was. As for DeFreeze, he was told that he was going to be allowed to leave Soledad. There was a car waiting, and he escaped. And there's a guy named James Mayfield who was the guy who enabled him to escape to the Bay Area.
No, so the guys who helped him escape, these were real radicals, or they were like FBI, CIA guys?
Well, no, and this guy is really fascinating, James Mayfield. He was a guy who worked with Westbrook at the Black Cultural Association. So just as Westbrook was a CIA agent who then was cooperating with the California Department of Corrections, James Mayfield is a very sketchy character who more than one person, including, by the way, Patty Hearst herself, identified as the guy who waited outside Soledad prison and drove DeFreeze to the Bay Area. Inevitably, there's a whole interesting section of Revolution's End where DeFreeze befriends a woman he was having sex with when he was in prison, Patricia Soltysik, who became one of the members of the SLA, and they lived together in Berkeley for a while. And it's quite a wild story, because if you think about it, there are three women in a supposed revolutionary organization who had sex with the black prisoner who is the head of it. So you say to yourself, well, what kind of political organization is this? These are women who were completely smitten with this guy and the idea of being with a prisoner who advocated the overthrow of the government, or so they thought. And yes, I'll cooperate with them, and I'll try and rob a bank and get money. The white followers were naive people who had no idea who DeFreeze really was. And if they had known, there's no way they would have been in the SLA, because their lives would have been in jeopardy.
Okay, so the white guys were legitimate radicals.
They were, and one of the most interesting ones was a guy named Willie Wolfe, who sadly died in that shootout in May 1975 in South Central Los Angeles. I live in L.A., Ed, and people tell me, you can't, it's called South Los Angeles now. You're not supposed to call it South Central. But I've heard it called South Central for so long, I just can't get it out of my system. Willie Wolfe was the least militant member of the Symbionese Liberation Army.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying. Or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
Army. And Colston Westbrook, who Willie Wolfe met at the Afro-American Studies Department at UC Berkeley. Colston Westbrook played this kid perfectly. He said, yeah, I hear you want to change things and you want to help prisoners, and I'm part of this program at Vacaville. Why don't you come and you can meet some of these guys? So Willie Wolfe, not really being a violent radical, just being someone who wanted to change America for the better, is introduced to Donald DeFreeze. And many of the original members of the SLA came to the Black Cultural Association meetings at Vacaville by invitation of Willie Wolfe, who was manipulated by Colston Westbrook. And he was a sweet kid, and it's so complex that I won't go into it now, but if you read Revolution's End, you'll see that Willie Wolfe started to suspect who Donald DeFreeze really was, and he wanted to leave the organization. And at one point, he was the only member of the SLA who left the Bay Area and spent time with his father in Pennsylvania and was having serious doubts about going back. He's really an incredibly tragic figure, and not at all the kind of, we got to go out there and kill pigs kind of guy at all. He was a very decent kid. And most of these people, by the way, were highly educated. A lot of them were college educated. And they just were living in a period of time that nobody now can understand, where they thought that the government of the United States was racist and that we were wrong to be in Vietnam and that Nixon and Reagan were law and order fascists and they had to be stopped or we would all wind up, being put in prison camps. That's literally what they believed. And on top of that, they naively believed that there could be a revolution, a military revolution in America, which, of course, considering the power of the military and the police in America, is absurd. But their intentions were good. They were not jihadists. They were not pure terrorists who simply wanted to kill people. They wanted a better and more just country, and they had no idea how to go about affecting it.
Oh, boy, we got a commercial coming up. Brad Schreiber. The book is Revolution's End, The Patty Hearst Kidnapping, Mind Control, The Secret History of... It's a long title, my friend. Donald DeFreeze and the SLA.
Donald DeFreeze and the SLA. It is a long one, but they said, hey, the longer the better.
Yeah.
I said, okay, watch out, man. It's going to take up half the cover.
Because for search terms, yeah, it's better. But now, do you have a website or anything like that where people can... Do you have other work you do?
I do indeed. Well, I've got www.bradschreiber. Obviously, I've got an Amazon page where I do updates as to where I'm appearing. I'm working on a 10-part dramatic series. I'm writing the pilot episode for Revolution's End to hopefully be done on television. I'm also a consultant, so I work with other writers to help them on their projects. And I can't say much about it, Ed, but I'm very excited. I did a book about the early years of Jimi Hendrix called Becoming Jimi Hendrix, and did really well for me. And I want to do a book about the history of American music and political change.
Okay, we'll be right back after this with more of Brad Schreiber. Some of the best stuff I've heard in a long time. It's great stuff. Thank you.
I like very much
radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
Did you know there are 3 million edible food plants on Earth, and none have the nutritional value of the hemp plant? HempUSA.org offers you hemp protein powder. It does not contain chemicals or THC, is non-GMO, and is 100% gluten-free. Hemp protein powder burns fat, builds muscle, contains 53% protein, and feeds the body the nutrients it needs. Call 888-910-4367 and see what our powder, seeds, and oil can do for you. Only at HempUSA.org. HempUSA.org introduces 3 brand new detox formulations of microplant powder. Brain Fuel for depression, bipolar disorders, and stress. Total Care, anti-cancer agent that cleans the liver and organs and increases memory. Rejuvenate, invigorates and heals the body, mind, and spirit. These products are your alternative to pharmaceuticals. Call 888-910-4367 and like us on Facebook. We ship worldwide. Only at HempUSA.org.
The last hour of American Freedom Radio you have been listening to is proudly sponsored in part by BigReggaeMix.com, the global healing station.
Produced by Mitch Santel and executive produced by none other than Errol Brown, winner of 5 Grammy Awards and the last producer and engineer of Bob Marley. Visit us now at BigReggaeMix.com for the latest show schedule, updates, and blog postings. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter, too. BigReggaeMix.com.
Everybody talking about gun control. Gotta get rid of the guns. I like guns. You got a gun, you don't have to work out. I ain't working out. I ain't jogging. You don't need no gun control. You know what you need? We need some bullet control. We need to control the bullets. That's right. I think all bullets should cost $5,000. You know why? Because if a bullet costs $5,000, there'll be no more innocent bystanders. Every time somebody gets shot, you be like, damn, he must have did something. So they put $50,000 worth of bullets in his head. And people would think before they kill somebody, if a bullet costs $5,000, man, I would blow your head off if I could afford it. gonna get me another job, I'm gonna start saving some money, and you a dead man.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow. Friendships to flourish with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs, and artillery batteries not included.
No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, no fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio, American Freedom Radio.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by Subash Technosis, SubashTechnosis.com. If you need websites, search engine optimization, press release, content writing, data entry, anything you need to outsource to India, customer service, these are the guys for you, Subash Technosis. I've known Subash for about 10 years now. Okay, you can trust this guy. He'll hook you up with a good deal. Subash Technosis, check it out. And go to their Facebook page and please like. Now, we got one of the fascinating topics I think we've ever had on this show. Revolution's End, the Patty Hearst Kidnapping, Mind Control, the Secret History of Donald DeFreeze, and SLA. We have Brad Schreiber. Now, Brad, you're saying that you're trying to do a treatment for a TV series. Do you think that's possible to have this true story come out about this? Or how would that be possible?
Well, I have a producer connected to Lionsgate in Los Angeles who really believes in this project, and we're already looking for what's called a showrunner. In television, the showrunner is someone who is a writer-producer who is in charge, inevitably, of a staff of people. And what I'm doing is I've already outlined 10 episodes based on the book, and I'm writing the first pilot episode of 1 hour. It's a story that you could go off in a lot of different directions, but obviously for the purpose of doing a 10-hour series, you have to sort of concentrate on certain characters and let other things go. Well, one of the characters, as I said, who I'm most fascinated by is Colston Westbrook. At the time that he and Donald DeFreeze were interacting, he was 36 years old. He could speak 6 or 7 languages, including Swahili and Chinese. He talked like sort of in what they used to call jive or street language. He used the N-word with incredible frequency. And he was literally a CIA officer who, if anybody accused him of anything, he'd accuse them of being snitches or trying to keep down the black prisoner movement. He was a fascinating character, and in Revolution's End, I follow carefully all of his quotations and all of his public appearances, and you can see how he started lying and he started losing credibility in the public eye. And for me, one of the most fascinating moments in the real life story of Donald DeFreeze and Patty Hearst and the SLA is a communique in April of 74. She was kidnapped, remember, in February of 74. And in April, DeFreeze pronounced a death warrant on 2 people that he knew, who he now was very paranoid, of course. He was afraid of being killed. He named 2 people as snitches, and then in the communique, Ed, he named Colston Westbrook as an agent of the CIA.
Whoa.
Now, this has been verified by more than one person that Westbrook was in the CIA. This is not theory. So the question becomes, how did Donald DeFreeze know that the guy that he met at Vacaville, who's having white radicals and black prisoners talk, was in fact a CIA agent?
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying. Or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
How did he know in order to accuse him publicly? And it appeared in newspapers across America. What drove me crazy is that nobody followed up on this. Nobody questioned why this guy who's supposed to be in charge of the SLA is saying, Colston Westbrook's CIA. Why didn't they check it out? Why didn't they get a grand jury together? Why didn't they haul him in front of a grand jury and demand to know his entire history? They would have unraveled the case then and there, and it would have saved the lives of those 6 people who were wiped out in Los Angeles.
Well, that's true. There was an active kidnapping going on. Why wouldn't they bring this guy in? Where's this guy today? Is he alive now today?
No, he passed away. You know, the FBI's case on Patty Hearst is called HEARNAP, HEARNAP. And I went through every bloody page of that thing. It's on the website, and it's literally thousands of pages. And usually when you ask for a Freedom of Information Act, it's useless. Excuse me. The reason it's useless is, number one, is the government says, we don't have that material anymore, or we don't know where it is. Then you prove to them that they do have it. And the second reason it's useless is they take forever to send it to you, that you might wait even a year or 18 months. Then the third reason that the Freedom of Information Act is kind of useless is once they send you the documents that you have paid for and waited for forever, they're redacted. So all the information that you really wanted as a researcher is crossed out. Now here's the really cool part. Imagine me, this nerdy guy in Studio City, California, going through thousands of pages of HEARNAP. And I come to one page that has redacted the name of the person, but it keeps the interrogation, the Q&A between this person and the FBI intact. And I read the interview, and I see that the FBI agent says, and so tell us more about when you were running the Black Cultural Association at Vacaville. So I go, oh my God, that's got to be Colston Westbrook. Well, he absolutely lied to the FBI. He said he refused to answer certain questions that they asked. He had a lawyer present. And he said that he had no idea who Willie Wolf was. He had, in fact, driven him to Vacaville prison and introduced him to DeFreeze. So Westbrook was this guy who was bigger than life. He was incredibly bright, and he was constantly being questioned, And he loved the attention, Ed. He thrived on people suggesting that maybe he was involved in some way. And he just thought it was great fun. And even though he died at 51, no one ever brought him to trial for his involvement in this case.
Fascinating. Now, DeFreeze escapes prison. What's the first thing? What does he hook up with? What does he do next? Was he a full-time operator then for the CIA? What was going on?
No, it's really intriguing. You know, he hooks up with inevitably with Patricia Soltysik, who one of his 3 white girlfriends who visited him when he was in prison, and Nancy Ling Perry. So the 3 of them are kind of the early core of the SLA. Then he winds up in East Oakland. A good choice if you think about it, because East Oakland in 1966 is the birthplace of the Black Panthers. Ironically, the group that Donald DeFreeze was infiltrating when he worked for LAPD. And then other people are sort of falling in with him. Now, the area that I think is most ignored in research about Donald DeFreeze and the SLA, because Patty Hearst, of course, sucks all the oxygen out of the room. It's fascinating, you know, a rich white girl kidnapped and becomes a bank robber. And everybody tragically overlooks the fact that Dr. Marcus Foster was murdered, and that his second-in-command, Robert Blackburn, was seriously injured and has suffered in pain, although he lived from the November shooting, November of 73, I believe. So here's the big question. Donald DeFreeze, while a petty criminal, has been manipulated by the CIA, given drugs at Vacaville, allowed to escape to set up a phony left-wing group, and now a black superintendent, the first one in the history of Oakland schools, is murdered by his group. Why is he murdered? Who decided he should be murdered? In Revolution's End, I make a strong case that it was Westbrook who basically allowed DeFreeze to get out of prison, get out of jail free card, like in Monopoly. And then once he was out, not knowing it before he left, but once he was out, he was told, this is what you're going to do. You're going to try and get someone to kill Marcus Foster. That's why when the San Francisco Chronicle and KQED television in San Francisco reported that white radicals had met DeFreeze, and that he said, hey, man, I'm a hitman, or hey, man, where can I hire a hitman? That very likely what he was doing was trying to set up the murder of Marcus Foster. Well, nobody in the far left in the Bay Area was about to become a hitman. They didn't even rob banks. So I believe, based on Clifford Jefferson, a convict who was friends with DeFreeze, based on his testimony, that at the BCA, Colston Westbrook used to talk about Marcus Foster and used to spread lies, that it created the context to then order DeFreeze to take out Marcus Foster. When Colston Westbrook was at the BCA, he used to talk to black prisoners about Marcus Foster is going to have an ID card system for all students in Oakland. He's going to turn it into South African apartheid. All these lies. The fact of the matter is Marcus Foster was a brilliant man and a moderate man who had the respect of everyone in Oakland, from the right wing all the way over to the Black Panthers. And no one ever understood why a left-wing radical group would kill a black superintendent who basically was loved by everyone. The answer, in my opinion, based on my research, is that Marcus Foster made one error in terms of the right wing, and that was he was talking with members of the Black Panthers. And while he wasn't allowing the Black Panthers to change anything in the Oakland school system, he talked to everyone. Elaine Brown of the Black Panthers went to Marcus Foster and said, hey, what if we provided security for Oakland schools? Well, Marcus Foster knew that, the establishment under Reagan was not going to stand for that. So he politely demurred and said, no, thank you, Elaine, that's not a good idea. But the very fact that he was talking with them was the worst-case scenario in the minds of Reagan and Evel Younger and Raymond Procunier. In essence, for the first time in history, Oakland schools is being run by a black man who is now talking to the Black Panthers and is going to allow them to have influence in the birthplace of the Black Panthers, Oakland, California. We have got to find a way to take him out, and the best way to do it is to find a black prisoner who murders him and will take the blame for it. And in the process, if the murder of Marcus Foster instigates any action on the left, such as white radicals or Black Panthers engaging in gun battles, it's the perfect legal pretext for law enforcement to move in and sweep them up. So it would have accomplished more than one goal. And in fact, no one, left, right, or center, in the 70s ever figured out the real reason why Marcus Foster was murdered by a left-wing group. And this is the first time in book form that anyone has sort of suggested, here's what was going on, and here's the reason why. DeFreeze didn't want to kill anybody. He just wanted to get out a free card and maybe be a snitch and live with a couple of white girlfriends in Berkeley. That's all he wanted. But he had people telling him, no, this is what you're going to do. And I believe, the end of this whole little diatribe, Ed, is I believe that's why he identified Colston Westbrook in an SLA communique that was read in every goddamn newspaper in America. Because he felt betrayed. He thought, okay, it's okay to be a snitch and get out of jail and kind of report back to you. That's fine. But no, now you're going to blackmail me into murdering somebody, a man of my own race? He was furious with Westbrook. Problem, of course, is he was powerless to really do anything. And he went about it in a completely ineffective way, just simply saying, Colston Westbrook is CIA and a member of military intelligence, which Westbrook easily deflected. But that's why he said that. So those are the two things that people never answered in the 70s. Why kill Marcus Foster, and why is the head of the SLA saying this guy is the CIA?
So now, in that point of the story then, okay, DeFreeze has his kidnapped victim who's also sort of his girlfriend. So he's out of their control now. He's no longer being handled by anybody. To make that accusation against Westbrook.
Well, here's the thing, and this is the part that I admit is conjecture based on everything else that I've said that is factual. The big question that I don't think anyone can answer is, and I actually say this in Revolution's End because I want to be a responsible journalist and not be considered a conspiracy theorist who doesn't really have any facts. I say in the book, I believe, based on all the evidence, that inevitably DeFreeze was ordered to kill Marcus Foster and went ahead and did it, and then went rogue and said, you know what, if you're going to come after me anyway, I'm going to be a revolutionary. I'm not going to pretend to be a revolutionary. I'm actually going to take these people, 3 of the women I've actually made love to, these other people who are willing to die for me, and I'm going to be their leader. I'm not going to be a snitch anymore. But of course, there were many other terrible decisions that were made, including the decision to leave the Bay Area and come to Los Angeles, which inevitably led to their doom.
So then, do you think that Patty Hearst was in on the kidnapping the whole time?
No, think of it this way. There's nothing illegal. There literally is nothing illegal in visiting a prisoner and even having someone arrange for you to have sex with that prisoner and giving that prisoner money for his political movement. That is not against the law. Now imagine that prisoner then says to you, hey, you don't get along with your sisters. What if we kidnap them and we get money for the movement and then we let your sisters go unharmed? And what if you say, you know what? I don't think I want to visit you anymore. So what really happened between DeFreeze...
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
Over the past 75 years, more than 10,000 chemicals have entered our food supply, but the EU allows just 300 additives. At Thrive Market, we prioritize quality, banning over 1,000 ingredients found in conventional grocery stores. Our Healthy Swap scanner helps you find better versions of your pantry essentials, without the junk, dyes, or fillers, and everything is delivered right to your doorstep. So shop at a grocery store that actually cares about your health at thrivemarket.com/getstarted for 30% off your first order and a free $60 gift.
And Patty, and this is based on the research by Lake Headley, a private investigator like yourself, a brilliant private investigator, who Vincent Bugliosi of Manson murder fame called the best private investigator on earth. Lake Headley, as well as other attorneys and investigators, went into the prisons and talked to all these people and found that Patty Hearst broke off the relationship with DeFreeze because she was frightened of him. She didn't know that he was a police agent. She didn't know he was cooperating. She thought he was merely engineering his own escape. And when she said, you know, I don't want to have anything more to do with you because you're talking about kidnapping my sisters, he was furious. And that's when he went to the people who were going to break him out and said, I know you're talking about what we might do on the outside. Well, I want to get even with Patty. What if we kidnap her and we, get this money? And they said, yeah, that's a great idea, Don. We like that. And that is why Patty Hearst was kidnapped instead of, the head of the Union Bank or the head of the Bank of America or, the head of Del Monte Corporation or all the other people that the SLA had on their list of potential enemies of the state. I mean, that's what people were fascinated by, Ed. It's like you're this radical group and you're talking about fascism and corporate totalitarianism and, and there's an argument to be made there, by the way. And you're talking about potentially kidnapping all these corporate heads and people who represent the right wing and all the things you hate in American society. Why are you going to kidnap an art history major from Berkeley? And the reason was DeFreeze knew her, DeFreeze was angry with her, and he wanted to get even with her. And it still fit into the plans of the CDC and the CIA.
Oh, man, this all makes so much sense, the way you lay this out.
Of course it does. It only took 40 years for me to get on the Ed Opperman show and tell America what happened.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You can imagine my frustration with Jeffrey Toobin's book. Jeffrey Toobin's book doesn't even mention the name of Colston Westbrook. Doesn't even mention it once. So, what are you telling us? You're telling us stuff we already knew about the bank robbery and the other people involved. And that's why, Ed, you have your show.
Well, don't you think that Toobin always does
being sycophantic, this is why there are shows like this, because there are people out there who go to Skyhorse instead of Doubleday and publish their book and work 2 years and have two other publishers turn it down, even though they can't disprove anything in the book, because people either want to know or they don't want to know. And thankfully, you and your listeners want to know.
Oh, yeah, people are starving for this kind of information. But now, don't you think that Toobin, he's always writing a whitewash for them, for them? You know what I mean?
Let's put it this way. By the way, since we're on, I actually am glad that Jeffrey Toobin is out there writing his books. Yeah. I mean, I think he's not much of a writer, but he's coalescing material, and I think that the FX series, People versus O.J. Simpson, was fascinating. Of course, he didn't write that. He found some really good people in Hollywood. And, I think there was very little that I found useful in reading his book, with the exception, there's one factoid I love that he came up with. He said that during the shootout in L.A., that the LAPD was so intent on wiping out those people without giving them a chance to surrender that one unit of the LAPD asked if there were any fragmentation grenades. They were ready to murder those guys. They didn't want to even consider capture. And I didn't know that. Although in my book I show proof from an LA Times article that the LAPD used what are called pyrotechnic grenades, which are for outdoor riot control only, and they used those after the tear gas because after a 50-minute firefight, they just wanted those guys dead.
You know, take it with a grain of salt. I've had people tell me that there's certain people that the government considers enemies, that they need to burn them. They need to burn them because there's some kind of theory that their souls will return in another life and come back after them. It's something along those lines, you know?
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah,
I don't know anything
just,
about that. But
just throwing it out there.
Think of it this way.
Yeah.
If the LAPD used DeFreeze, and they in fact did, as a police agent, and members of the California Department of Corrections and a CIA officer have also used him. Governor Reagan's Attorney General has had direct control over the operation. Think about how many people will be embarrassed if Donald DeFreeze is captured and even in his addled mind goes, well, I'm going to tell you everything I know finally. There was just no way that could happen. But fascinatingly, the FBI had to take a secondary role in this because their worst fear was they were going to be involved in a shootout that would kill Patty Hearst, and it would really harm the FBI that had already been harmed in terms of its reputation because of COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program that they had run for years infiltrating left-wing organizations, most of which were completely law-abiding. So Charles Bates, of the special agent in charge of the FBI in San Francisco, is a fascinating character who I really enjoyed researching. He's actually kind of, even though he's a law enforcement guy, he's extremely smart and he's very moderate. And in the shootout and fire, the FBI took a secondary role because they weren't sure that Patty Hearst wasn't in that house on 54th Street in South Central. And the last thing the FBI wanted was to once again be condemned as shooting first and asking questions later. Clearly, the LAPD had no problem with that.
Now, are there any surviving members of SLA that can corroborate any of this, or?
Well, that's a two-part question, Ed. Part one is they're alive, and part two is they're not going to corroborate any of this. Think of it this way. Jeffrey Toobin paid money to go to Harris, Bill Harris, one of the members of the SLA, and buy all this research and view his entire understanding of the SLA through the lens of Bill Harris. Okay? That's one guy in the group. Now, if Bill Harris, and I'm quite sure he didn't know that Donald DeFreeze was an agent, why would Bill Harris go, hey, I can give you more information that supports what you found out, Brad? In essence, all the people, if they were all alive and I could sit them all in a room, my bet is that not one of those people knew that Donald DeFreeze was an agent, and that if I told them everything I told you and your listeners in the last hour and 20 minutes, they go, I don't believe it. Because think of it, everything they believed in was based on a black prisoner movement where black prisoners were political prisoners, where America was racist, and that the black prisoners were leading society in a new direction. So it's like rejecting everything that you live for. And I really, I've had a number of people go, well, did you talk to Patty Hearst? And I kind of chuckle. And I say, why would I want to talk to Patty Hearst? Patty Hearst is the last person who wants to talk about whatever she really knows. And by the way, we can talk about the trial and some of the things that she revealed about herself and some of the reasons that I believe she should never have gone to jail and some of the reasons I believe that she wound up going to jail, including some limitations that her lawyers had.
Who was her lawyer? F. Lee Bailey?
F. Lee Bailey was in charge, but, I actually knew Terrence Hallinan when I lived in San Francisco. He was the first attorney. He was a left-wing attorney. He was very well respected. So was his father, Vincent Hallinan. But what happened is that's who Patty chose to represent her. Then the father came in. Randolph Hearst came in and said, you know what, we're just going to move Terry Hallinan way to the side here and bring in F. Lee Bailey and his people. One of the reasons, and by the way, Tubin, an attorney and a guy who understands the law very well, did not cover in his book American Heiress, is the fact that Terrence Hallinan, in an original affidavit when he met Patty Hearst in prison in the Bay Area, said that she believed she had been given drugs. So Donald DeFreeze, who'd been subjected to behavior modification at Vacaville, used basically the same technique to convince Patty that the FBI and the police would just murder her if they ever kicked down the door and that she should join them. Kept her in a closet and potentially gave her drugs. That is what her original affidavit stated that Terrence Hallinan presented. Now imagine that you're Randolph Hearst, you're getting all this horrible publicity. You're obviously very conservative in your views. Your wife is on the board of the Regents of the University of California and a personal friend of Ronald Reagan. Are you going to have a left-wing attorney say that your daughter was taking psychedelics and that's why she joined? No. You're going to have an attorney who simply states that she was taken, that she had no connection to this group, she didn't know anything about them. And ironically, in order to preserve her image, I think they wound up helping her get convicted. Well, we'll never know. I believe if she had revealed her connection to DeFreeze and the reason he had her kidnapped and said they coerced me with drugs, I think that we might have had a historic case that said that due to coercion, Patty Hearst was forced to become a member of the SLA, robbed the Hibernia Bank, and was not legally, mentally responsible for her actions. But of course, because there were all kinds of inconsistencies in her testimony, and I don't know if they had access to it, but F. Lee Bailey never presented anything about Vacaville. Went on at Vacaville or what happened to DeFreeze at Vacaville. If he had, it might have worked. But saying that, Ed, to be honest, it might have not worked at all either, and then it would have been more embarrassment to the Hearst family.
Now, you mentioned the drugs, too. Now, what about DeFreeze? After he got out of prison, because he was on these drugs in Vacaville.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
Over the past 75 years, more than 10,000 chemicals have entered our food supply, but the EU allows just 300 additives. At Thrive Market, we prioritize quality, banning over 1,000 ingredients found in conventional grocery stores. Our Healthy Swap scanner helps you find better versions of your pantry essentials without the junk, dyes, or fillers, and everything is delivered right to your doorstep. So shop at a grocery store that actually cares about your health at thrivemarket.com/getstarted for 30% off your first order and a free $60 gift.
Was he had prescriptions when he was out on his own?
No. In fact, the SLA had a. There was a point. Again, sometimes it's kind of comical. There's all this dark stuff, and then you read about these ridiculous arguments that they had, or how incompetent they were. Even as criminals. And they had arguments about, well, we'll be. We're a unit. We're like a military unit, which is awful, by the way. If you think about it, in the mid-'70s, if you think that America is racist and the war is wrong and you want to affect change, how stupid is it to say that you're a military unit? You're in essence being the thing that you're protesting. So as a military unit, in their communiques, the SLA started arguing as to whether they should drink alcohol or stop drinking, whether they should take drugs anymore or not. And what they decided was, well, we won't take psychedelic drugs anymore, but it's okay to still smoke marijuana occasionally. But we've got to be mentally fit. And I can just imagine that argument, one night late, and we're like 7 of them are crammed into a 1-bedroom apartment, arguing whether they have the right to smoke marijuana and be revolutionaries. It's just bizarre and comical. But of course, in the end, it's tragic because of, the fact that the SLA and this whole operation we've talked about destroyed the legitimate leftist protest in America and set the way for police militarization through SWAT. And by the way, the other awful thing that this whole period did, Ed, was it enabled the Attorney General of the U.S., William Saxby, and our dear friend Evel Younger in Sacramento, to both lie and say that the SLA was this huge terrorist movement and that they were linking up with other groups and that there had to be more law and order, or else that the whole country was going to go to ruin. There were like 10 members of the SLA, and they were all incompetent. But they used the bad press attendant with the SLA to strike fear into America and try and pass a lot of laws. And they knew that these stories weren't true, and yet the Attorney General of California and the Attorney General of the United States were making statements saying that the SLA was part of a larger movement of left-wing terrorist groups, and it was a lie. And in a just America, they would have both lost their jobs. Both Evel Younger and William Saxby would have been thrown out of office for lying about the number, the power, and the effect of the Symbionese Liberation Army, let alone the fact that they were created by the CDC and the CIA, which I'm not even bringing up, but all these lies about how powerful they were and what they were going to do.
Are you there? I think we might have lost our guest. Brad, can you hear me? Okay, let's go. Chat room. Can anybody hear me? Can anybody hear me? No, my mic. Okay. I seem to be freezing up over here. Shit. Oops. Okay. I think we lost you, Brad. Yeah, we lost Skype. Oh, man. This is my favorite stuff here. Okay, we got to wait for Danny to call me back, and Danny might not even be around. So we'll wait for Danny to come back and reconnect the call here with our guest, Brad Schreiber, who's written the book Revolution's End, The Patty Hearst Kidnapping, Mind Control, The Secret History of Donald DeFreeze, and the SLA. We just have a little Skype drop. Unless my internet's down here, too. I don't think it is. No, I think I'm cool. Let me check with the chat room, see if we're cool over there. If they're... usually... Okay, they can hear me. But the guest is gone, guys. Our guest... Maybe the Donald DeFreeze came back from the dead and kidnapped him or what. Our guest has been kidnapped. Much like Patty Hearst. So we got to wait for Danny to call. Maybe, you know what? Here we go. American Freedom Radio is back online. They're probably picking up this call now. And we can get this. Yeah, AFR went offline there. So we'll have our guest back in a couple of seconds. By the way, little announcement on Sunday night. No. Monday night at midnight, I'm going to be on the Richard Hoagland show. I think it's called... I forget what the show's called. But I'm going to be a guest on there, and we're going to be talking about cyber stalking and stuff like that. Okay, we got Danny back here now. We're waiting for our wonderful guest, Brad Schreiber.
Yeah, I'll get him back.
Thank you, Danny. I think our guest got kidnapped. I thought maybe Danny got kidnapped. Danny, have you been kidnapped? Danny's has a cell next to Patty Hearst. Somebody got kidnapped. But anyway, Monday night I'll be on Richard Hoagland's show, and we're going to be talking about what do you call it? Cyber stalking and telephone harassment and stalkers and stuff like that. Because poor, I guess Mr. Hoagland's being stalked. So Revolution's End, and also you can go to bradschreiber.com, BradSchreiber.com. Hey, and
Brad's back.
Hey, Brad, you're back. I thought you got kidnapped, Brad.
You're making me paranoid now. I was feeling very confident, and then all of a sudden the line goes dead.
Yeah, we're worried about you, my friend. Real quick, though, a couple of questions. Kind of left field stuff. Have you ever heard of something called the Wellspring Commune that is connecting in with these SLA guys?
The Wellspring Commune?
No, I haven't heard about it, but I won't talk about it too much, but there's an interesting little strand in Revolution's End about a place in Colorado called Nederland, which some of those people hung out in, and that's an interesting side story. But I don't know about Wellspring. Okay. And what do you make of, and we were talking about, was DeFreeze on any drugs? Did he have prescriptions when he was out? We left off.
No, we know for sure. I mean, it was the I believe the LA Free Press that had the story that an attorney named William Nessel, who worked with Lake Headley, said that they found that at Vacaville, DeFreeze had been injected with Prolixin. Clifford Jefferson also said that he and DeFreeze were subjected to a variety of drugs at Vacaville. And then there's another prisoner who says that DeFreeze was using a drug called Eferol, E-F-E-R-O-L. I don't think any of those drugs were available to DeFreeze when he was out. And as I said, the SLA said, let's be disciplined and only smoke marijuana and not drink too much. And no psychedelics.
Yeah, that's interesting, because once you get on those kind of, antidepressant kind of, those kind of, drugs, those, mind-altering drugs, you got to be weaned off those. You can't just stop on that cold turkey. You know what I'm saying?
That's true, but remember that the average time that a prisoner was in Vacaville would be between 3 and 6 months, and DeFreeze was there for 3 years, and he was not a problem prisoner. That's the thing that people have to remember. A lot of the prisoners sent to Vacaville were real problems, behavioral problems, and they used drugs and other coercive methods to control them. DeFreeze was a totally cooperative guy, and they kept him there for 3 years, in essence, molding him. And I think that his drug of choice, really, ironically, was plum wine. He loved this brand called Akadama, imported, I think, from Japan. Akadama plum wine. And some people identified him as an alcoholic. But, yeah, think about the position he was in, where he basically signed his own death warrant after cooperating with the prisons and with a CIA officer, and was hiding that fact from the people that he had sort of betrayed. I mean, that's what really fascinated me to write this book. It wasn't Patty Hearst. It was Donald DeFreeze and the unusual position that he'd been put into. I mean, certainly he put himself into it in a way, but the feeling that I'm trying to give in Revolution's End, Ed, is that he never had a chance. Between the physically abusive father, the inability to make a living, he married a woman older than him who already had 3 kids, and then he had 3 more kids very quickly. This is a guy who never had a chance, and then, you know, he made that fateful decision to cooperate with the LAPD as an informant, and his destiny, in a way, was set.
Yeah, you've made that very clear. You know, you made that very poignant portrayal of DeFreeze.
It's heartbreaking. There's a lot of, you know, there are a lot of things that moved me actually about this story. Nancy Ling Perry, the SLA member who befriended a black Muslim in San Francisco named Jamalaya Montaz. And now remember, San Francisco may be the most liberal city in the United States in the 70s. And there were these black Muslims in the Fillmore district in San Francisco who knew where the SLA was hiding out on Golden Gate Avenue, and they never gave them up. And there was this incredibly moving description by Jamalaya Montaz where she went over to the apartment, and there were all these white people, and she thought, what are these white people doing caring about what's going on with black people in America? And the thing that moved me the most, Ed, was that she became friends with the white members of the SLA and would talk with them about politics and how to make America better, and that Montaz literally said, I had never hugged a white person in my life until I went to Golden Gate Avenue and met the white members of the SLA. And I just found that astonishing from where we are today. It isn't that racism doesn't exist in America, but in the most liberal city in the mid-70s, that a black Muslim woman could say, I had never even hugged a white person. It just shows you what was going on in the country. And that story, I think, makes it more real instead of just saying, these guys were just a bunch of loonies and they all needed to be put down. You come to understand that it's about people who make bad decisions, but that basically wanted to do good.
Well, let me ask you this now: the 7 heads of the snake was Kwanzaa, right? Those are the 7 feasts of Kwanzaa. Well, how the hell does that fit in? What's going on with that?
This is another fascinating story. So there's a guy named Ron Karenga.
Right.
Ron Everett is his real name. He was a black nationalist in Los Angeles, and he was an informant. But the difference between
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
Informing and DeFreeze informing for the LAPD was Ron Karenga was smart. And Ron Karenga was smooth. And in fact, Ron Karenga visited privately with Ronald Reagan in Sacramento. So here's an informant who is well respected by the law and order establishment. And he created this holiday, Kwanzaa. And lo and behold, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa wind up in the SLA literature as the 7 principles of the Symbionese Liberation Army. And while it can't absolutely be proved, it would seem that Colston Westbrook said, look, when we let you out of when we let you out of Folsom Prison and you're running the SLA, you're going to need to be able to talk about politics. Here is the symbol we want you to use, the seven-headed cobra. Here are the principles that we want you to espouse when you talk to the white followers. And it all came out of an LAPD informant named Ron Karenga.
You know, you would hope that Karenga got a royalty for this Kwanzaa that he invented, you know? But I guess he didn't.
He's a fascinating character. There's a photo of him, actually, in the center of Revolution's End. He looks very intimidating, but, you know, he's well-respected, and I believe he's a professor at one of the Cal State Los Angeles campuses. At the time, he was a nationalist. He wanted the separation between the races. He believed that the only way that blacks could get a fair deal in America was by having their own rights in their own neighborhoods. He was a total separatist.
It's interesting, though, that no one ever mentions the connection between Kwanzaa and the SLA.
I see it every once in a while on the internet, but the strongest connection is we know that Karenga came up with it, and we know that the SLA literature had it. The missing link is, how did DeFreeze get access to it? And the best guess is that Colston Westbrook introduced him to it.
That's true. Because at that time, no one heard of Kwanzaa back in 1973. Yeah, no one heard of Kwanzaa back then.
Not at all.
Yeah,
Not at all.
that never even dawned on me.
Yeah. And then, you know, the story is so complex that, you know, in the time remaining, we haven't really talked about the Black Panthers that much.
Okay.
And I'm fascinated by that angle, not only because our friend Donald DeFreeze was setting up Black Panthers and then ironically winds up living in East Oakland, right in the middle of where the Black Panthers started, but that their history, to really understand how frightened Reagan and Younger and everybody were of the Black Panthers, I found a really fascinating story that in Los Angeles, the Panthers were intent on making South Central Los Angeles so well armed that the LAPD would not even dare to enter the area. Now, what I've done is I've tried to embrace both the danger of the Panthers and the decency of the Panthers. Because don't forget, if you want to take a fair view of the Black Panthers, you also have to remember they started a breakfast program for poor children that J. Edgar Hoover said was the most dangerous program in the United States because it legitimized this group. A group that, by the way, started arming themselves not to kill white people, but to protect their own people in ghettos like East Oakland from police brutality. And certainly that story has to ring true for what's going on in America right now. You know, especially just like a day or two ago, we had the United States government, the Department of Justice, say that there is systemic racism in the Baltimore Police Department. So these things shift over time, but the Black Panthers in 1966 came out of that. Sadly, after a lot of FBI infiltration and disinformation, the Black Panthers sort of consumed themselves. They turned on each other, sometimes based on erroneous information, sometimes based on bad decision-making. And what looked like a very potent political organization basically was destroyed, as a lot of organizations were destroyed in the 70s. Venceremos, a radical organization that Joe Ramiro of the SLA belonged to, it was infiltrated and destroyed. And a lot of these organizations never even did stuff that you would sort of have them arrested for. They printed materials and spoke about the overthrow of the government, but there were no bank robberies by radical organizations in the Bay Area before the SLA. There certainly weren't murders of educators But you can see how those horrible actions completely eviscerated whatever was legitimate in the left wing. And don't get me wrong, the left wing made a lot of tactical errors in their decisions. But this was infiltration, and it was illegal, and it was wrong.
And if you look at today, like people like Al Sharpton, was an active agent for the FBI, going around making cases for them, wiretapping people. And the new Black Panther Party, which seems to be totally infiltrated and a total sham organization today. It seems like
it's really hard to know too.
Yeah,
I have to say it's so difficult, and that's the thing. Infiltration is so effective because you don't know who to trust and who not to trust. And when you think someone is cooperating with the government to set you up, all they have to do is go, no, you're the one saying that in order to destroy us. And it's this never-ending loop of accusations. And meanwhile, whatever is decent about the organization just crumbles. It's sadly highly effective. And it's kind of held us back. It held us back in the civil rights movement. It held us back in the more violent period of the late 60s and early 70s. And I wouldn't be surprised, Ed, if it's affecting what's going on now with the Black Lives Matter movement and all that. I've heard accusations that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization out to kill police, and I think that's completely wrong. And I don't think there's any evidence to support that.
No, just last night.
You can see how people who are fearful of police being shot down in the streets are emotional and want to blame somebody. And wow, here's this organization talking about a white police brutality. They must be responsible for these terrible actions in Dallas. And there's absolutely nothing to support it. So you have to be very careful about accusations. And much as I loved what Mae Brussell did, she made some errors in her scholarship.
Oh, well, point that out, because I can replay the Mae Brussels show right after this.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
What do you got?
And again, to the people, and I meet so many people who say, hey, good for you, you wrote this book, and you must love Mae Brussell. I go, Mae Brussell's where it all started, but she said that the entire Symbionese Liberation Army was mind-controlled, and that's ridiculous. What she missed was the influence of the black prisoner movement and the use of Donald DeFreeze to get well-intentioned white radicals to follow him without understanding what he was doing. I mean, the idea that they were all on drugs or somehow they were all hypnotized to simply follow him, it's just completely unsupportable. And what it did was it sort of undercut what we did know about the SLA back in the day. Yeah. And it wasn't plausible at all. And she should never have taken that sort of step in logic and said, yeah, they were all mind control. Look, even Donald DeFreeze, after what was done to him at Vacaville, he was not a zombie. He was not some sort of robot or Manchurian candidate. He made decisions on his own. Some of them were terrible decisions, but inevitably something prompted him to identify Colston Westbrook as the CIA guy he was. Something that infuriated him and made him feel betrayed. That is not the action of a guy who's completely controlled. And I think, a Hollywood movie about a guy who's completely controlled is interesting, but in the real world, double agents and people who are spies, they're very complex people, and they're facing difficult decisions, and they have changes of mind. And that's why I wanted to write Revolution's End and explore who Donald DeFreeze really was and some of the issues that faced him before he was destroyed.
one of the questions we got from Cara Della Chopa was about the Harrises and the Atwoods. She says that other researchers think that they had intelligence connections too. What do you make of that?
Cara, I think it brings up a valid point in that Mae Brussel said, I don't think she said that it was Atwood, but she said that Bill and Emily Harris had a connection to the Indiana State Police, that they were, in essence, narcotic officers. I have never seen anything else on this from anybody. The first time I saw it, I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. But I think that what May was trying to do is say they were all agents of the right, and that is not correct. And I've seen no validation that the Harrises were narcs. In fact, if you research, it's fascinating. I have a section of Revolution's End where I have a chapter where you get into the background of the original SLA members. 2 of the SLA members were in Vietnam. They volunteered.
Oh, really?
Hello? Volunteered. They did not get drafted. Joe Ramiro was in the Army, and he saw a lot of atrocities around where My Lai existed. For your listeners who don't know about the Vietnam War, it was terrible, where innocent civilians were murdered by the American military. Joe Ramiro was in that area.
Brad, we've reached the end of the show. Brad Schreiber, thank you so much, my friend.
All right, I enjoyed it so much, and thank you for your time, Ed.
Keep in touch. If you ever got something you want to promote, get a hold of me right away, okay?
It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, there you had Brad Schreiber, Revolution's End, the Patty Hearst Kidnapping, Mind Control, and the Secret History of... what's this guy? It's a long title. Donald DeFreeze and the SLA. Very good stuff, guys. I'm sorry about that little mix-up we had there with Skype going down. One question I wanted to get to him at the end there, but it's really hard to interrupt him because he's a really good storyteller, so I like to let him go, was Patty Hearst marrying her bodyguard. I believe he was a Secret Service agent or retired Secret Service agent. I always found that interesting. Yeah, I think we still got that static, too, which I think is... I kind of hear it when I take my headphones off, too. I think it might be like a cricket outside the house, but my mic's picking it up. Don't forget, after this show right now, okay, it's not going to be on Spreaker, but it will be on every other station that carries us. And it won't be on American Freedom Radio either. But on every other station that carries us, we're going to have William Ramsey, and it's going to be about Children of the Beast. Thank you very much. I think it was a great show, too. I think this guy was really good information, and I'd like to get him back and talk about some of the other stuff he works on. Maybe a couple of member section shows with this guy. Great stuff, man. I really like this. And it all makes sense, is the thing, you know? And the just blew my mind just now about how would DeFreeze know about the Kwanzaa stuff? How would he know? It's impossible. You know? No one knew heard of that Kwanzaa stuff back then. So that's interesting, man. That blows my mind. I'd never considered that before. Okay. So coming up next is going to be William Ramsey. Nick Drago might be running into a problem because he said his dad or something's in the hospital. So we may not have the Nick Drago show tonight at 8 p.m. Okay, so keep Nick Drago and his family in your prayers, please, okay? Because that's, who wants that, His dad in the hospital and suffering there. And so Spreaker, everyone on Spreaker, head over to awakeradio.us, and that is where we will be playing the William Ramsey show about Children of the Beast. Also, too, a lot of people are asking me about the book, the Phoenix Program book about with Doug Valentine. That show is available on YouTube. It's available on YouTube. It's available on and I'm going to be posting the link. What do you call it? On Facebook and in the chat a link to that book because a whole bunch of people are asking about the book. There is a chat over at Awake, so you can go over to Awake right now, everybody. Okay, well, I am closing down Spreaker. Everyone go over to Awake for the William Ramsey Show. William Ramsey Investigates is the title of the show. And what do they call it? We're going to be playing his show there now, and we're going to be closing down Spreaker. So if you're on Spreaker now, it's not going to be anymore. Okay? Good night. And I'll see you next week. Don't forget, everyone, please go to Facebook and like Subhash Technosis. SubhashTechnosis.com is our new sponsor. Very important that we build these guys up because they're helping us. They're going to be helping us to build up the YouTube channel and the website and all this kind of stuff like that. So a lot of stuff going on here, guys. We need your help. Go to their Facebook page, Subhash, Subash, Technosis, Technosis. That's on Facebook, and also SubhashTechnosis.com. Websites, search engine optimization, press releases, content writing, call center, you name it, okay? Data entry, these are the guys for you. I'll see you guys in a while.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities. Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.